Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the special meeting of council for the Township of Minden Hills for Thursday, November 21st, 2024. First of all, thanks to county staff for assisting in providing us their council chambers while our township building roof is being repaired. It's greatly appreciated. And also, with this time of year, wanted to give a big shout out to all of the staff, the volunteers, the participants for both the tree lighting ceremony last week and the Santa Claus parade, both of which I think were a rousing success. It always is helpful to have plus 9-degree weather and sunny on the day of the parade. But today and this morning, we're reminded that Santa Claus's sleigh will be able to move across the snow. So in reviewing today's agenda, the public meeting will provide an opportunity for public input in regard to the township's 2025 budget. There will also be an overview of the draft business plan, the draft 2025 budget overview, and the water and wastewater budgets. Madam Clerk, please proceed with a roll call to confirm attendance.
Councillor Sisson,
Present.
Councillor Saini,
Present.
Councillor McKelvey,
Present.
Councillor Johannesson,
Present.
Councillor Ingram,
Present.
Deputy Marshall,
Present.
Mayor Carter.
Present. We respectfully acknowledge the Township of Minden Hills is located on Treaty 20 Michisagi territory and in the traditional territory of the Michisagi and Chippewa nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations, which are Curve Lake, Rama, Hiawatha, Alderville, Scugog Island, Beausoleil, and Georgina Island First Nations. We acknowledge the shared presence of Indigenous nations throughout the area and recognize its original Indigenous inhabitants as the stewards of its lands and waters since time immemorial. I call this meeting to order at 9:02 a.m. Madam Clerk, please read the resolution.
Moved by Councillor Ingram, seconded by Councillor Johannesson. Be it resolved that the November 21st, 2024 special council meeting agenda be approved as circulated.
All those in favor? That is carried. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Seeing none, we move on to the public meeting for the 2025 budget process. Madam Clerk, please read the resolution.
Moved by Councillor Ingram, seconded by Councillor Johannesson, that council adjourn its special council meeting at 9:03 a.m. to proceed into a public meeting regarding the 2025 draft budget plan, 2025 water and wastewater operating and capital budgets, the proposed budget overview, and to receive public comments.
All those in favor? That is carried. For the public meeting for this day, I call the meeting to order at 9:03 a.m. This public meeting is held to receive public input regarding the 2025 draft budget. The CAO, Cynthia Fletcher, and the Director of Finance, Wendelin Longren, will present your reports regarding the 2025 draft business plan and budget. Madam CAO, please start with an overview.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good morning to members of council and members of the public who are in attendance or watching on screen. As the mayor indicated, we're pleased to kick off what will be a bit of an iterative process for the 2025 business and work plan that we're proposing, the associated tax-supported operating and capital budgets, the water and wastewater budgets. And what I'm going to speak to just to start off with is the process for the budget and business plan review moving forward after today. I'll just give a few brief comments about the draft proposed business and work plan and how we've developed the tax-supported operating and capital budgets to date before turning over to our treasurer and our director of public works to talk about water and wastewater. So as the mayor indicated, we've got some work to do today. We also want to hear any public input and feedback from council between today and mid-January, when we pick up the further review of our budget and business plan, staff will take away any feedback that we receive today, any direction from council, and we will return in mid-January with further information for council to consider. I'm also going to highlight that there are still some unknowns in the budget that our treasurer will point out to council. So things like growth or our deficit surplus that will be identified and brought back in January with more solid, refined numbers. So as I've indicated, we're kicking off our budget and business plan review today, January 14th. Council will do a more comprehensive review of the operating and capital budgets for fire, public works, and administration. January 16th, Council will do a more comprehensive review of the departmental budgets for building and bylaw, community services, and planning. We will take away any feedback or direction from those meetings, and the intention is on February 4th for council to deliberate the budget, and our goal is to ratify the budget so that we can tender out any approved works for 2025. In terms of the draft business and work plan before you, council, that's in the front part of your binder. So the proposed work plan or business plan for 2025 reflects on what was accomplished in 2024. So we have some successes that was supported by council in our community, things like the village green restorations. Based on public input and support from council, we were able to establish accessible public washrooms in our downtown core. We moved our waste management and waste diversion in-house. We made significant infrastructure investments with council's support. And we had support for several community events. The mayor has outlined 2 recent ones, but we had a number of very successful events over the season. The business plan, in addition, will outline some challenges that we had in 2024, work that is still underway. It gives an overview of each departmental area, so the core services that they provide, any departmental initiatives that they have underway or are proposing, any of the corporate projects, and these are more major projects that take resources from across the corporation. We made some headway in 2024 on stabilizing our workforce, starting to focus on streamlining and modernizing some of our customer service processes. We made infrastructure improvements, and we started putting a lot of focus on engaging our community. In 2024-5, we will continue modernizing and streamlining more customer service processes, focusing on community engagement, with council's support, more infrastructure improvements, and turn our minds to long-range financial planning as well. Lastly, Mr. Mayor, I just want to make a comment about how the budget was developed, particularly the tax-supported operating and capital budgets. So you're receiving a high-level overview today, more comprehensive reviews to happen in January. What's before you today is the result of a lot of work by departmental teams and then review with the treasurer and myself. I always joke that we seem to approve a budget and start on the next year's budget almost immediately. Before considering anything new in our budgets, we reviewed our core services and service levels. We looked at projects that are already underway. We want to finish them and finish them well. We focused on legislated requirements and any external services that are required. We kept that focus, council, in recommending anything new. So you'll see things that are legislated or compliance matters, things that are highly recommended to preserve infrastructure, property, or safety, some equipment at end of life. And then we're identifying, and our treasurer will highlight some external services and pressures that we need to consider as part of the 2025 budget. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to thank council and staff for their work and input over the past year in helping us set the foundation for the draft 2025 budget. I'd like to thank members of the public who have provided us input over the last year and will continue to do so today. And with that, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to turn the rest of the presentation over to Ms. Lonergan and Mr. Timmons, who will take us through the water wastewater budgets. I understand that our contracted service provider will be here around 9:30. Maybe are here right now. Look at that. I was told to stall until they could arrive. So with that, I'll turn it over to our director, our representative from Aqua, and our treasurer. Thank you.
Please proceed.
Good morning, Mayor and Council and public. Before you is the 2025 proposed rates for water, wastewater. We wanted to bring that today so that we could move ahead and have the rates in place for January 1, 2025. So it would be a clean transition in rates. So basically this budget was driven by our 2022 water wastewater study. So in accordance with that, the water rate would go up 2% January 1, and as well the wastewater rate would go up 3% in 2025. So we're going to be looking in 2025 to look at the status of the current 2022 study and look at updating the study in a timely manner within the legislative requirements. So that being said, because the study was done in 22, it was 2% and 3%, but we don't know what those rates will be going forward with the current pressures of inflation, et cetera, since COVID. So also in the water and wastewater budget, staff has conferred with Aqua on what our critical infrastructure needs are to make sure that the health and safety of the public and the residents is adhered to. So those are captured within the increases of what we're able to do nicely. And then also we're looking at taking some money from the reserves to do the automatic meter reading and improve efficiencies in labor aspects of the budget. So in the wastewater, Minden wastewater treatment plant, we're looking at doing some filter rehabilitation there. In the Minden system, we're looking at doing some piping replacement and some piping and manhole repairs. And sorry, that's in the water treatment. And in the wastewater capital investments, we're looking at well inspections and cleaning, continuation of fire hydrant replacements, water main valve repair replacements, and in Lutterworth Pines, flow meter replacement, well inspections and cleaning, and distribution and repairs. So we're looking forward to doing at least a 5 to 10 year capital plan to make sure that we're making enough money in the systems to do those capital replacements. So I guess I'll open it up if there's any comments, any concerns, any items that may be brought forward from either council or the public to be considered.
Um, if I may,
Okay.
Just following, the process, so you've covered all of the overview of the budget, and you're comfortable with it? Okay.
Yes.
So, Mr. Mayor, if you want to follow through then with the rest of the
Okay.
public meeting.
So members of the public will now have an opportunity to provide their comments. We will start with attendees participating electronically and then proceed with members of the public attending in person. Is there anybody electronically?
Mr. Mayor, no, we don't have anybody that's registered electronically.
Okay. So, yes, just in a second. So first of all, is there anybody attending in person that wishes to speak to the 2025 budget? If so, please stand or raise your hand. I'll address each member once at a time to come forward and speak to your comments. I think you get after the public vote. Go ahead.
So the members of the public understand, is it just for the water and wastewater that we're asking for their input right
Yes.
now? And that hasn't been clarified, so that's why I wanted to ask my question now, as opposed to when I'm on the list.
Or if there's anything that they wanted to bring forward for the budget. This is the public meeting for the budget.
But we haven't done the overview
Right.
of the,
No,
of the
no.
draft budget.
That's what I asked earlier. Have you completed the overview?
We have for water, wastewater, not the operating and capital budgets.
All right. So we will rewind and just consider water, wastewater at this time. So, are there any questions concerning water and wastewater?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think what we need to clarify is in the public meeting, we can do an overview of water, wastewater, an overview of the draft operating and capital budgets,
Okay.
and then seek public input on either. Then council will go into your business section, and that's where we will have much more dialogue. Through you, Mr. Mayor, then I would ask the treasurer to give an overview of the draft tax-supported operating and capital budgets.
Please hold your questions, public.
Continuing on with the 25 draft operating capital budget. I guess what I'll start off saying is staff has really done a dive, and we are still working at diving deeper to make sure everything is refined. The budget increase right now is sitting at 9.6%, and with potential growth of 0.9% brings it to 8.7% tax increase. Now, I won't have the return of the roll until early December, so that's when in January those numbers will be refined and further calculated. There may be, I always say that the budget is like a pie. So no matter how much different ways you cut the pie, it's still a pie. So there will be some changes from one department to the next and shifting of funds to ensure that the bottom amount raised by taxation is reasonable. So I'll just highlight, for example, the committee of adjustment will be moving to the planning department because that fits better there. So the pressures that we have to date right now is the OPP cost for 2025 is over a 3% tax increase to our budget. So when we look at 8.7% potentially, over 3% of that is pressures from the OPP budget that they've given us that we have no control over. So we don't know if the province is going to provide any relief in that regard. So we have to kind of work around that, but we want to ensure that services the levels are consistent and that we can still operate and do the things that the residents and council wishes. The other pressures are wages. They have been factored in at a full complement, where in 2024, there was some vacancies and it wasn't at a full complement. So those are pressures that will be coming on because it is budgeted at a full complement. Another pressure is POA revenue. That was budgeted in 2024, which we will not get in 2024. So that needs to be adjusted down to zero because there has been talks that there won't be any POA revenue coming to Minden Hills in 2025. Insurance, that is a 6% increase overall, which is a pressure. And wages increases 4% and benefits is a 10.9% increase. So all of those things combined make pressures on everything that the township does without even considering COLA or inflation. Other things coming down that will be presented to council in the near future will be a new asset management plan. So we need to look at the asset management plan and those pressures of where we are deficient in either, because the new asset management plan is not just the core assets, it's the fleet, it's the buildings, it's the equipment, it's everything that the township does. So it's gonna be a document that we'll use in conjunction with budget to ensure that we're building revenues, reserves, and making sure that we're putting enough money away to do things. So we're going to be working at a 5 to 10 year forecast for capital and things for council. Things that we'll be looking at to alleviate some pressures is bulk purchasing, potentially through LAS with to do tendering of larger capacity, which will probably get us a better price in the end. And doing a deeper dive to make sure projects in the past are those still important right now, or is there a shift? But we need to have a concise list of all projects and how those projects are funded. We don't know what the potential surplus of 2025 is. So normally that surplus is split into the reserves in each department to fund capital needs in the future. So that will be coming back in January once we have more up-to-date numbers with the budget from this year. Also, I'd like to have a concise list of everything and have it in each department correctly so that it's a transparent process for staff, council, and the public to understand the true cost of each department. Previously, the library budget was included in finance, for example, so that will be kind of broken out. So you'll see some differences in the final product in January. So I just wanted to highlight those types of things. And I'd like to gather as much information from council on your needs and the public's needs so that we can go back and give it a really good overview and decision-making for January so that we're ensuring that we're doing everything that council and the public is expecting. So, I think
So-
that's- yeah.
I just want to make some clarifying remarks. So being in a multi-tiered environment here, in other words, we have the 4 municipalities in Halliburton County that roll up to Halliburton County, which has a separate budget. And then, of course, we've got the budgets of at the provincial and federal level. So we do receive some funding from both the province and from the federal government. But the overwhelming majority of all the funds that we require to operate the municipality come from the taxpayer. So we are presently working to develop the county budget at the same time. The county budget is influenced by certain costs that are shared with the city of Kawartha Lakes. So for child services, social services, and housing, the city of Kawartha Lakes and the county work together. And so there's been a large increase requested by those 3 groups in order to pay for those services. That is presently going through the city of Kawartha Lakes budget process. And only when it gets through that could it be finalized so that it can be determined how much the county has to contribute to those services. And it's a substantial amount of money. So we have been working to recognize there's, again, one taxpayer. And so you pay a certain amount of your taxes go, well, there's money that goes to the school board, that's something separate. But there's monies that are paid to the county and to the municipality, which makes up your total tax bill. So we are really dependent to know that what the taxes are, or the tax increase will be from the county, because then that determines, or influences what our tax increase could or should be. Because again, there's only one taxpayer, and that is you. There are other demands on our budget that come from the outside, our budget being the Minden Hills budget, which include the police services. So the police OPP numbers that came to all the municipalities of Ontario have shown increases of anywhere from 15 to over 30%. I think ours is running in the 19 to 21% increase. Now, this is a substantial amount of money. This is our total police bill is in and around $2 million. So this is substantial increases. On November 29th, we are having our first meeting of our police detachment board. And that is a new board that has been set up to provide civilian oversight to police services. At that time, the OPP will be presenting their budget and the reasons for their increase in their budget. And there is hope that a, the provincial government will find it in their wisdom to either find some other funding to be able to reduce the impact on the municipalities, or to take this huge increase and try to spread it over a number of years, which would mean that our increase wouldn't be so high, because as you just heard, if we had a budget of 8+%, more than 3% of that 8 is coming from just the increase in police services. So what I'm getting at in trying to make something that is somewhat simple, very complicated, we have lots of different things that influence the budget, and that is why we have to wait until we get the final numbers from the OPP, we get the final numbers from the county, so that we can then try to come up with something that has as little impact as possible on our taxpayers. So lots of moving parts and lots to come still, but just wanted to try to explain particularly that increase in the OPP, which is huge. And because our situation is somewhere in that $100,000 range, every time we get an increase of $100,000, that increases our municipal tax rate by 1%. So it doesn't take very much of an increase to have a large impact on all of our taxpayers. So with that, is there any other comments that you would like to make, Madam CAO?
No, Mr. Mayor, I think it's really seeking public input at this point.
Okay. So I don't believe we've all of a sudden had electronic participation increase.
No, Mr. Mayor, we have not.
All right. So I will now open it to members of the public who wish to speak. I'm waiting for a hand. So please come forward and state your name and address for the public record. And
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Jean Neville. I live at 1071 Dogsled Trail, Minden Hills. First of all, I have a brief presentation about the Laughlin Community Center, but I did have a question on the wastewater management. It just came to mind here. I think I already answered it for myself, but the changes and improvements in the water for the town of Minden and Lutterworth, that comes out of their own reserves, correct? It's not anything to do with the surplus from 2024?
So through the chair, so the capital improvements would come from the rates that are raised from the budget. And then there is one, the reading of the meters, the automatic meter reading would come from the reserve. So that does come within the
Their own.
their own, yeah.
Reserve.
Thank you. Thought I clarified that. My presentation is regarding the Laughlin Community Center. We're a small representation, the three of us here, of concerned local residents here to speak on behalf of renovation of the Laughlin Community Center located on Gellert Road. We appreciate council and staff giving us this opportunity to speak prior to budget discussions of 2025. As per the agenda, it was noted that Laughlin Hall has been deferred to 2026. This facility has been left dormant since COVID, which is a critical length of time for any building, let alone one of this vintage. I regret not being present at the last meeting of the Laughlin Community Center Committee. The members present came away from what they thought was going to be a hopeful, positive discussion, including information and solutions, to an overwhelmingly costly and the demise of the structure with no hope of replacement. After leaving the meeting and having agreed to its demolition, their minds went back over information they felt had been omitted and conclusions made without any background presented. With this concerning decision having been made, we individually set out to do more investigation on our own. On speaking with the person who estimated the moving and relocation of the building, which was one of the options suggested by staff, his tender of $110,000, in fact, took into consideration the possibility of bricks coming off the building, and not that it was impossible to move because the bricks were going to fall off. Replacement of the structure was suggested to cost $1 million. This estimate represented a build of double the present size of the existing building. Since the initial issue is the mold that is due to the dampness and water in the basement, we investigated filling the basement with rocks and concrete, which would be in the range of $20,500, leaving a crawl space of 3 feet. Another alternative would be to dig around the outside, big O drainage and purging, with spray foaming the inner basement walls. I believe the municipal building went through a similar sealing and foaming process, and it would be informative to realize that cost in comparison to the size, applied to the Laughlin Hall. It may be feasible. A replacement building has also been investigated with costs well under half the $1 million we were quoted. The 4 women working on different angles of securing this rural, well-used and loved center have gleaned pages of information regarding mold remediation, prefab replacement, as well as building with utilizing some of the existing fixtures. There's several new items in that hall that shouldn't be just thrown out because there's been mold in the building. That's just a few of the things we've investigated. The community in previous years would come forward from various trades and get the work done at minimal and usually just material costs with pro bono labor. This exorbitant pricing is indicative of enterprise and not of a caring community. We urge this council to dedicate funds to at least start this restoration in the 2025 calendar year, with help from willing tradespeople to restore our community center. Centralizing all recreation and events does not make a healthy, happy municipality. Thank you for your time. And we are more than willing to share any ideas and information we've gathered presently here. It's an indication of what has been, seems to be the most reasonable direction forward. Some of the information we found was cost prohibitive and also would, affect where the septic is, where the well is, and parking, entranceway and that sort of thing. So that's just a summary of um, some mind bending and considering that maybe saving the old structure was the best way to go.
Thank you very much. We,
We did have a question regarding, does any of the municipalities' insurance cover any of those mold items? It wasn't a flood, but
sorry.
I would have to look into, I don't think so, but I can't answer the question off the top of my head.
thank you.
Okay, thank you. Madam CEO, did you have any comments you wanted to make? I know that there's a meeting or so coming up.
Sure, I can make a general comment. We will be regrouping with the Laughlin Advisory Committee December 10th for a committee meeting, and the intention was always to bring a more comprehensive report on the work that's been done during 2024, bring that to council for January 16th when we're looking at our community centers and our facilities. So that is still our intention, Mr. Mayor. So I'm happy to regroup. I wasn't at the September 17th meeting, so if there's some confusion about what was presented or some ideas from the committee, we're happy to discuss that on the 10th. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who wish to ask questions or comments? Madam Clerk, has the Clerk's Department received any written or verbal comments regarding the 2025 draft budget?
No, we have not, Mr. Mayor.
And the Director of Finance received any written or verbal comments regarding the 2025 budget?
No, I have not.
Okay. Does council have any questions of clarification post public input? If seeing none, does the Director of Finance have any further comments?
Not at this time.
Does the CAO have any further comments?
Not at this time, Mr. Mayor.
As you can tell, I'm open to any comments from anyone. Okay, this now completes the public meeting process for the draft 2025 budget. The budget will be further discussed under the items of business section of this agenda. And now declare this public meeting closed at 9:43 a.m. Madam Clerk, please read the resolution to return to the special meeting of council.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Shell, seconded by Councillor McKelvey, that council adjourn its public meeting and resumes a special council meeting at 9:43 a.m.
All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, so moving on. We start with report 2437, the administration 2025 business plan and budget review process.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I think I made my comments in the opening, just outlining the intention of today, and then the fact that we will be working on refining our budget and business plan between now and mid-January. And again, the intention is for council to do more specific departmental budget review on the 14th and the 16th of January. Thank you.
Okay, so now we get to discussion of, I assume is there a resolution? Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Moved by Councillor Sisson, seconded by Councillor Saney, that council receive report 2437, administration and finance 2025 business plan and budget process for information.
All those in favor?
We
Go ahead.
haven't finalized the motion yet, so they can.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So just a couple of questions or comments. Um, Under administrative services in the business plan, it talks about online process for marriage licenses. I would like to suggest we cancel that service. We don't have to do it. Many, many years ago, there was only one person in the county that issued marriage licenses. Dysart does them, so it's just throwing it out there for somebody to consider this going forward.
Madam Clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilman Kelby. It's actually, we're just looking into it. We're not moving forward with anything. We just want to review it and look into it to see if it will help the efficiencies of the department with stat reporting and so on and so forth.
You have another question?
Okay, just to that, I just think we, even aside from online processing, we might want to consider not doing that.
So for something like that, if it's something council wants us to look into, we would come back with what is the impact of just canceling that service.
So I guess that's where we need to, it's my suggestion. It doesn't mean 6 other people agreed. So how do we do this?
Go ahead.
So just to clarify for the public, we wouldn't be canceling the service of marriage licensing. We're just talking about the online processing of marriage licensing.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
You want to cancel issuing marriage licenses.
And so to my point, through you, Mr. Mayor, if that's direction you want to give staff to come back on the 14th with what would that impact look like?
Deputy Mayor Shaw.
Yeah, I would like to see how many we issue per year, what that kind of looks like as a cost, and what this, the online processing would also cost, maybe, and maybe it would detract that or subtract from the in-person that you have to do now financially wise, but I think I'd like to see, yeah, how many were done in, say, the last year as an example, and what the cost was. Then, yeah, we could make a decision then.
I think that's reasonable because right now, no idea what it costs. Did you have another question? Go ahead.
Under community services, just a comment. And I'm not trying to insult anybody, but Snowden is spelled differently than what we continue to spell it. And I keep getting people saying it's a concern. So,
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's a valid concern.
Under planning services, 25 projects, consolidation of zoning bylaw and official plan, which I support. That'll be very helpful. The only thing is I had asked that the correspondence from ULinks be put on the last agenda because I'm thinking they would be able to perhaps do that as a project. And I know we're running against the clock for submissions to ULinks, but it wasn't on the agenda, so I don't know. That's why I'm bringing it up here. I think that they could probably take that project on.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we will follow up and find out if that's something they can take on. The other thing we were exploring or in the process of exploring is post-secondary classes or folks who could take on this work rather than hiring a consultant.
Okay. Councilor McKelvey.
Which I support, whether it's post-secondary, ULinks is that. So anyways, that's my only brief comments on the whole business plan. And then I have other comments as we get into the next part, but I think that's yet to come.
Okay. Any other? No, please read the resolution. Sorry. Madam Secretary.
If I can provide just an update, so our staff are watching. Our planning staff did connect with ULinks, and it's not in their field of work. They're looking for more environmental type work.
That's not really That shouldn't be accurate, but I will,
I will follow up, but that's the message I
Okay.
just got.
because one of the things that with ULinks is that we're trying to not reduce the amount of environmental work, but to get work in other areas, particularly in the arts and in business. So, okay. Counselor Saini?
Yes, thank you. Wasn't sure where to bring this up, but I guess the business section would be the best place to bring it up when we're looking at the overall increase and what our business plans are going future. I want to thank all the municipalities that are going forward to the Minister of Finance to say we cannot continue with these kinds of increases on a regressive property tax as we see our potential increase here. And I think that it would behoove us as part of our business plan and as part of our saying this has to stop somewhere to take this to the forward to the ministry and saying we need a new funding plan. We cannot continue to do this.
This will be
So
on,
this is under my business section. If there's another place to raise this, I'd be happy to. But we all know we do have a deadline in Friday, November to bring something forward and be part of that. Thank you.
this will be on the next agenda, our agenda for the next meeting. That's the exact point.
Thank you.
Please read the resolution.
Moved by Counselor Sisson, seconded by Counselor Saini, that council receive report 2437, Administration and Finance 2025 Business Plan and Budget Process for information.
All those in favor? That is carried. Moving on to finance, water and wastewater operating and capital budgets. I have a question. And since the folks from Aqua traveled overland for many miles to get here today, the list of projects we have here, is that the complete list that was recommended by Aqua?
Through the chair, there were some items pushed to the following year based on budget restraints. Looking at specifically just some quick examples, you'll see we had fire hydrant replacement. We're trying to start a replacement program year over year while we sort of try to bring in some new hydrants, and over a number of years we could get a replacement program going. Originally we had $100,000 in there. We've reduced it to about 31,000 based on the funds available. That's about one fire hydrant. We're about $25,000 to do a fire hydrant these days. So that's realistically where that is. So there's a couple of those. Same with water main valve replacements. We're down to 31,000. Same reasoning. We had come in around 100,000 for those two items each. But given our situation, that's what we've come down to. So there are some things that we have sort of pushed. However, we think we still have a pretty good plan here, and just we won't do quite as much replacement as maybe we had hoped.
Do you mind if I heard that from Aqua also?
Sure, that's correct. We did recommend some more fire hydrant replacements. But I think given budget constraints that it's acceptable to do a reduced number for the interim. And I think we also put some unforeseen costs in there, more as a guide to what we've seen in the past. So those, again, those are monies that are allocated that in the event that something happens, then those would be needed. But if nothing were to break, then obviously those aren't needed. But we do put forth some cost estimates based on just historic spends for unforeseen repairs.
So fire hydrants and valves aside, in terms of the water treatment and the wastewater treatment, you're satisfied that everything that is being done is we will have good clean water?
Yes.
Questions? Councillor Saini first.
Yes, thank you. Just a quick question. I'm just wondering if Aqua and LAS work closely together to get the best materials and the best deal for municipalities, if that's something that's being done presently or could be done in the future with supplies that we need, new hot fire hydrants, whatever that might be. Thank you.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, Aqua leverages the provincial government's procurement policies. So we tender province-wide for anything that we need services for, like chemicals, larger tenders like fire hydrants and stuff like that. Those are tendered provincially, so we do get some cost savings just from the number of vendors that will potentially apply to those programs.
Councillor McKelvey?
So I have a couple of things here I would like to mention is that one is I want to know, because this was mentioned last year, I believe the description that Councillor Saini gave at the time was we're heating a tin can. So we're heating a tin can at the Lutterworth Water Station, pumping house. I don't know what you want to call it. When I go back to our new energy conservation and demand management plan, which it was also in the previous one, but it's in here again, and it shows that if we insulate the Lutterworth water, they don't call it a tin can. The cost is $2,428, and it would pay itself back in 1.5 years. So there's a lot of good information in this environment report that's on here, that's on our website. But I would like to ensure that the tin can is insulated. There's going to be another tin can insulation comment later on, but not in water and sewer. So how do we ensure that that gets done this year? So, because last year's suggestion wasn't acted on.
Go ahead.
I'll just comment on that. We did get some quotes on that work. I will maybe suggest that we can chat with I'll chat with the treasurer and come back with some on the next version, but we do have some numbers and we can certainly bring that into play.
Go ahead.
Under the capital, for the first wastewater treatment plan and the collection system, these items were all in the 2024 budget. So I'm trying to figure out why they didn't get done. And I know it's not included in our package, but if you go back to last year's budget, you'll find the spreadsheet that listed the 10-year, 5-year capital forecast for expenses that were priority. And so we're already a year behind on this again. Because the way I read it, this was already there in the 24 budget, and I'm assuming we just didn't do it. The 315,000, the tertiary filter rehabilitation, 100,000, et cetera, et cetera. Those 3 items were in I say last year, but it's really still this year, 24. So really we've gone off track on our 5-year capital forecast here, which isn't good.
Would you like to clarify?
So I guess through you, Mr. Mayor, we did have contractors come and look at the tertiary filter rehab. It's different in terms of scope, and they all provided different, I guess, mechanisms for repair. So we just wanted to have a review with our engineering group to see what's the best and most cost-effective way to do that. One of the contractors wanted to basically remove one of the exterior walls to try and take the equipment out through the wall, which then obviously increased the cost significantly. So we're just looking at options, but we weren't able to get sort of firm pricing and sort of an understanding of the scope of work for this calendar year.
So just to clarify on these capital projects and the relationship between the municipality and Aqua, who does the capital projects? Like who project manages them and and gets the work done?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, typically we get quotes and or tender the work. Then we provide that costing to the municipality for approval. And then they approve us. We typically project manage those projects.
Thank you. Councillor McKelvey?
Okay, so that's the one part of this. The Ord Street Pumping Station piping replacement, $115,000 was in this year's 2024's budget. So was there a reason it didn't get done?
Yeah, similarly to the other one, the quotes came in around that, and just in terms of having a review for engineering for what needs done for that, we just determined that it's probably better to defer it to this year.
Councillor McKelvey?
And the next one on the list was the piping replacement and manhole repairs.
So that's just an annual amount based on projected repairs that are needed in the system.
Okay, because on the,
So you'll see that I think that line item is kind of consistent every year. So it's just a placeholder dollar value for any repairs that are needed within the collection system annually.
did we do $100,000 worth of that work this year?
We did we did a sewer replacement on Prince Street with paving. Trying to think of what else was. And then sewer flushing and
Yeah, I think that's about it. So through the chair, I think I'll have to come back with some numbers about what was actually done, but those unplanned repairs are just that we spend it if we have repairs to do. And if we don't have those repairs, we don't spend that money.
And if you don't spend the money, it goes into reserve?
That would be a question for the treasurer.
That would be correct.
Thank you. Councillor McKelvey?
The unplanned repairs that were on this spreadsheet last year were removed by council because we didn't want to budget for unplanned, if I remember correctly, but it's neither here nor there today. But I do want to see another spreadsheet then, because if we push this off, everything's getting pushed off. And the way I look at this, if we didn't do this work in 24, then we're not even doing the 25 recommendations that were in here. And that's where my concern is. We're just going to keep pushing off and pushing off. I also have some comments on the rate increases, and the report that was done by Aqua in 22 was based on 21's costs, and we all know that that's not working for us anymore because costs keep going up far more than that. So I think we really are setting ourselves up for failure if we don't look at bringing costs down and also perhaps increasing that rate more than what's the 2% and get more money into the reserve, because we are going to be caught short here. I know $1 million reserve sounds great, but when you're talking water and sewer, it's not great. So I want us to look at costs, and I will point out that Aqua is wonderful. I wouldn't have run if they weren't doing the water system. Okay, so this is nothing against Aqua. However, every time we tender some project out or Aqua tenders it out, we pay that cost of that plus 15%, I believe, on top of that. So if we could maybe bring some of these projects in-house, and that would save the system that much money. I don't know if we want to even talk about the water reading project at this point. I have concerns with that, but is that now or?
Yeah, bring it up now.
Well, $250,000 is a lot of money, and I would rather see us, well, first of all, is Aqua going to bring down their rate because they're reading the meters now? Secondly, I'd like to see us look for some funding. There's probably funding out there somewhere for water meters. It seems like a...
We did look at reduction of service costs if it's switched to like non-manual meter reads. Yeah, like we would we would reduce our, like we would basically take that out of the agreement if it was, say, essentially like remote metering that just went to a centralized location instead of us. Obviously, we have labor to do that on a quarterly basis, so we would obviously not charge for that labor.
Okay, so is that, I mean, does it come as a kind of like a capital project that says, we're gonna spend this and we're going to save this, and this is the, you know, the end state? I mean, how do we, how is this handled here?
Through the chair, I think if the meter read is something council wants, we'll have to come back with that with a more fulsome plan of how that looks for council.
I think you're bringing it up. It's not really, this hasn't been pushed by council. This is something that is being presented to council, so I'm a little bit confused on how it works. Counselor. Yeah, no, sorry, I just meant counselor.
Through the chair. First of all, I like Tammy, would probably not have ran for council without Aqua there. They do a fantastic job. Nothing against anything they do. Last year, we had a delegation come to council complaining about their water bill being read late. And to quote our mayor, we have to do better, we will do better. Our last water meter reading was 10 days past the 30 or the quarter. 10 days. That was on mine. I don't know what the rest were. We're going to get a lot of complaints because people are paying extra for those 10 days being penalized because we didn't read them on time. What are we doing? What have we done? Nothing. We got to fix that. 100%. Can you give me, Jeremy, an update on where we're at with the hydrants on the Highway 35 and how much of that is going to go over into next year? And if it's going to get complete, and also are any of those hydrants, particularly the one at the Godfathers and the one at the IGA, going to be raised? I see they're at their same level, but they're well below where they should be.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I think we're down to 5 fire hydrants left. They will be completed by the end of the year. There are 7 that are identified that require extensions. So we've got pricing from our contractor for installing the extensions. That's been provided to the municipality. Some of them definitely do need extensions. They were based on drawings we have that show depths that obviously some of these fire hydrants were a lot deeper than what was identified on the drawings. So that's where the project is at.
Are the hydrant extensions extra?
Yes.
We haven't seen a number on that yet.
Councilor McKelvey?
I have real concerns with the information we just received, because I'm going to go back. If I had my notes, I'd tell you what day it was when Councillor Ingram told us the fire hydrants on 35 are a lot deeper than everybody's thinking. And we were told we had them checked, each and every one of them. And now here we are just finding out that, oops, Councillor Ingram was correct, and we've got some more money coming costs at us. And that hydrant project is becoming a nightmare. So I'm certainly not passing any, I personally will not vote for a budget to be passed today for the water and sewer until I have some information on this, because every time we add costs to that project, we add another 15% aqua, and we're taking it out of reserves, which aren't going to be sustainable here. So there's a lot of information missing on the hydrant projects, and I'm very disappointed to find this out today.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, we did check all of the hydrant depths, but we used the existing, we basically put a valve key down the valve chamber to get the heights of the valves for the hydrants, but there wasn't 7 out of the 21 that were installed had extension rods put in the valve chambers that raise the height of that valve to a higher valve. And I think the range in terms of the extensions is 12 to almost 7 feet for one of them. So a couple of them are obviously fairly short extensions, but they still, obviously we don't want the hydrants buried in the ground.
Do we have some estimate on the costs of that?
Through the chair of the council, we do. I just want to run this by. We just got these as the project is progressing. I don't want to think anybody's holding back information. It's just coming in as we go here. I will go over it with the treasurer and we'll have it for the next draft. I do have some rough estimates, but I need to finalize a few things.
As well, through you, Mr. Mayor, we did reduce our service fee on the hydrant installations as well, down to 7.5%.
Okay. Councillor Sisson first.
I would hope that we have a budget for this project, and I would hopefully we don't go over it, that we stop at whatever that budget is and pick it up somewhere else.
MCA,
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm writing a lot of notes about our water wastewater area. This is a near and dear to my heart from my background. I think for me, we owe council quarterly reports on our 5-year capital program. We owe regular updates, not just as part of our public works updates. So I've made those notes moving forward. I haven't had a chance to talk to Aqua or Mr. Timmons. I would like to initiate the new rate study next year so that council has lots of time to consider it. And when you think about it, the new rates should be in place for January 2027. Given that it's going to be an election year in 2026, I think we need to be well ahead of this. So just I'm making some notes, council. I think our hope had been to get our rates in place for January 1, but I'm also hearing lots of questions and lots of information that council needs. So I don't know if we want to separate out the rates or whether you would like. It sounds like we need to come back with some information that answers a lot of the questions that council has asked today. Thank you.
I would agree that you need to come back with the more information before we can settle these rates. Councillor McKelvey?
Just want to clarify, I wasn't suggesting, Mike, you were withholding information, okay? If I said it wrong, wasn't intended that way. I'm only saying that this project has become a bit of a nightmare and the costs are going up and up and up and it's way over budget. And we've already had that reported in the past. I still have some more thoughts on water and sewer rates and how in the 2025 budget, we're proposing a bank interest income of $12,000 for water. If our reserves at 1 million, 2% is going to get us 20,000. I don't know what we're getting these days, but it's got to be more than that, I hope. So again, I'm not suggesting we're going to lower these rates because I honestly feel we need to increase them at the cost of living increase of 3.1% that we've given Aqua, but I want more money in the reserve to help us down the road. But I am suggesting that that bank interest income line could be higher. The water has 1.5 million in reserve, I think, and sewer had 1 million, but I'm not sure with again that Highway 35 hydrant project, which some of it's coming from operating because hydrants are not just for the users. There was advertising costs in here that are going to go up. I just kind of wanted to know why, or maybe it's because of my thoughts that people we need to advertise in the paper when we're going to flush the hydrants because not everybody's on Facebook, and I did pass that off to Mike about that. So just thoughts that council needs to talk about here. I'm trying to get our costs down, our revenues up, and our reserves increase, because they won't touch a potential problem in the water and sewers. In my opinion.
All right, well, we're gonna get more information back. When would we get information back, and how does that affect our plans in terms of putting in the new rates?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if you can let me take that away,
Okay.
and work with our treasurer and Aqua and our Director of Public Works. Ideally, we'd like to bring it back before January, but it may be the first meeting in January that we bring it back.
Okay. Councillor McKelvey?
The first billing in 2025 wouldn't be until April, is that correct? Because it would be January, February, and March.
That's,
So we're not really holding up your billing by delaying this, correct?
through you, through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd ask the treasurer to comment. I don't think it's the billing. I think it's when the new rates take effect.
Oh, we could pass it in March and make it effective January 1st, so. But I just wanted to make sure we're not messing up your billing.
So the quarter four billing, I believe, happens in January, if I am thinking correctly, which would be the 24 rates. So going forward, I don't think so, but it's just to get everything in place for advertising to the public and getting those things coordinated in the systems, et cetera.
Madam Clerk?
I think it, as the CEO has mentioned, I think it's just important for us to go back, have a discussion with the department heads. And then the clerk's department will reach out, make sure we have quorum for another meeting, or tack it on to a meeting that already exists, but we'll circulate that information as soon as we come to an actual date.
Okay. So do you have an amended resolution, or?
So I can, if council is comfortable, we can just receive it as information today. And so it would be Councillor Sisson and Councillor Saini that would approve that amendment.
Okay.
Is that okay? Moved by Councillor Sisson, seconded by Councillor Saini, that council receives report 2416 finance 2025 water and wastewater operating and capital budgets as information.
All those in favor? That is carried. So the next three, in terms of the Lutterworth and water, Minden water, and then wastewater, is that similar? I mean, do we?
So your next item for discussion would just be the 2025 proposed budget overview. Because the bylaws we were going to bring to the 28th,
Right.
depending on when we recoordinate and select another date, they'll be pushed off as well.
Okay, fine. It's 10:18. We'll take a break till 10:30. All right, we're back. Okay, so we move over to report 2417, proposed budget overview. Please start when you're ready. Turn on your microphone. There we go.
Okay, so I'm just looking for, if there's any comments or from council or suggestions.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think, I think at this point, it's really our treasurer's given an overview. If there are points of clarification, there are things you want us to look into further in terms of coming back January 14th, we're open.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we did have in last year's budget, which was a special levy for infrastructure reserve. We've completed our asset management plan, or virtually completed the asset management plan at the county, and we found that there was a large discrepancy in our a large discrepancy in the reserves and what was required. And I suspect that we will get a similar gap here in Minden Hills when we're complete. Go ahead. So, I would, at the county, the request was from staff to go from a 1% to a 2%. After discussion, we moved it to 1.5%. But I would say that here in Minden, ideally, we would have a 1.5% also levy, because if we get behind on that infrastructure, it will be near impossible to catch up. So I would like that investigated.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, absolutely, we can make note of that. Just to give council an update, our Director of Public Works, our Treasurer, and myself are meeting with the consultants to finalize a presentation to council for our asset management plan. That will likely be January 9th. You'll hear more about that. We're thinking we would do the council meeting and then maybe a special session to spend some more concentrated time on the asset management plan. I don't think it's a quick report on a council agenda. I think we'll take a good hour and a half to talk to you about the asset management plan, but you should have that in early January.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Councillor Sisson first.
I agree with what you're saying about the 1.5%, but if you look at the proposed budget here right now, we're currently at 9.6 or maybe 8.7. You add another half a point, you're back up to 10.
Yeah.
That's way too much for me. I would not agree to that.
I guess I'm saying it from the perspective of, what are all the things that we need to be looking into and so on. I'm not in any way, shape or form expecting us to go to 10. We have to figure out, of the things that we need to take out, what is it that is in, what is out. So at this early stage, I just would like us to investigate that. Councillor McKelvey, I believe you next. Oh, sorry.
I'll just, through the chair, just to make a point on that. It's always my intention, and I'm a big proponent of putting away as much as possible. So that's a number. So we will work as staff to look at all options to try to get us to that point, but it wouldn't be at a detriment to the tax rate at the end of the day. So I just wanted to make that clarification.
Before you start, just one other quick question. Do you feel that you have a firm number from our impact people in terms of what the growth rate will be?
Yes, our draft is the 0.9%. I don't think it will be anything larger than that. It'll be in and around that. So once I get that return of the roll at the beginning of December, I can have some better numbers for council in January.
The reason I had asked, because I thought county did have a firm number.
They've given us a draft number, but they're still compiling the roll, so that's all I can propose is the
Okay.
draft number.
All right. Good. Councillor McKelvey.
So when I start on this tax supported budget document, and page 4 of it talks about, first thing is this policing that I want to bring up, where we're proposing an increase of 9.6% at this point, and I'm well aware that that's going to go up and down and backwards and inside out before we finalize things. But I just want to point out that the policing increase is a 3.8% on our levy. So to me, we are really at 6% or a little bit less, actually. So I just want, and I think it's important that we relay it that way. I'm not about to take the flak for almost 4% increase for policing. I think that belongs to the provincial government.
Just on that point, the city of Kawartha Lakes has decided that they are going to break up their budget and increase to say, this is the cost of our programs.
Yep.
This is our infrastructure levy, and then this is the police.
Yeah, and that's what I'd like to see us do too, because, but also on the policing, I don't think we've been able to figure out how much of this increase is actually retro pay, because with the province was such delay in getting their negotiations completed with the police association that we are now going back retro, or they have gone back retro on us. And I don't think that's appropriate or fair. And I'd like to see us try to fight that part of it. However, I do know we have a reserve that was from the first year when policing got downloaded to all the townships. None of us really knew what to budget and what the actual would be. So we ended up in this township with 21.8 in a reserve. So I'd certainly like to see us bring that forward in a revenue so that it helps offset some of this retro. Again, it's not operating in my mind that we're using it for, because it's the retro one time. And I'm sure that's more than $21,800.
Like I said, meeting on the 29th when the OPP had a meeting scheduled about 3 weeks ago that they were going to have an explanation of their finances and these increases, and then they canceled the meeting. But we expect on the 29th to be getting a full breakdown of these costs, and if there is any chance of them being altered. Go ahead.
Just something I'd like to have information on for our next meeting is that expenditures for wages and benefits talk about underfunding of positions in 24. Now, part of that will be the short-term rental person that didn't get budgeted for. And I really want to have that discussion at this table at some point in time, that we are going to look at the cost of operating that compared to what the revenues are going to be. So I'm really hoping that down the road we get that breakdown. Also, I know that we cut back some of the, and again, we were in a really tight budget. So we said, okay, we're going to do half the deputy CBO facilities manager position because we knew it wouldn't be filled. Is there other opportunities for that sort of thing in this budget? And you don't have to tell me that today. It's just, that's the kind of thing I want to know about when we get down the road. Police services, I think it says in here 18.7, but my calculation is it's like 23%. But I heard you mention this morning about the POA revenue. Now, the POA revenue went non-existent during COVID. City of Kawartha Lakes said they weren't making any money, so they quit sending it to us. And I know that we were utilizing one of those COVID grants, and I can't even remember what it was, but I know that the previous treasurer was bringing that $35,000 revenue in from one of those funding programs to help offset that. That grant money is not going to continue to be there. We also discussed last year that you as the CAO would talk to the CAO in Kawartha Lakes and find out what's going on here. You know, COVID's over. Why aren't we seeing some revenues from the POA?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I have played telephone tag with my counterpart. Indications were we're not going to see POA revenue, but I haven't had the fulsome discussion about why and why not. We haven't been able to connect, so.
Members of the public, could we just talk about what POA is?
Provincial Offenses Act, and how it works is that the city of Kawartha Lakes was the holder of that program. They get the revenue from the fines and they operate the program, and the net difference was supposed to be shared based on where the fines were levied, or maybe it was population. I don't know how it determined the breakdown, but this township had 35,000, I believe, in revenue from that. I just really struggle that revenue is not, how could it go to zero? You know, if their costs not been reduced, if they're not bringing in their revenue, I would think you wouldn't need as many staff to run the program. I see the police are out doing some charging, and I just don't understand how that could continue at zero, a net zero. It just doesn't make sense to me, and that's where last year we discussed we need to look into it. So, but that'll be why the policing costs, we've also lost that revenue in here, I'm assuming, instead of bringing in that funding that we had for COVID funding, whatever it was called. Service,
So,
Wasn't
yeah,
it
so
extra?
just for clarification, so I've,
excuse me.
in the proposed budget, I've reduced it to 0, so my discussions with the POA person in Kawartha Lakes is that it won't substantiate to any money in 25 or 24. So I don't want to propose anything that's not realistic.
Okay, do you have any other questions?
Contributions to the reserves, which is listed all the ones. It looks like you've added like 2% maybe to these from the previous years. Okay. The fire one's going up $25,000, which I realize we've drained that fire reserve in the last little bit, but we've actually left the roads capital reserve at the same, and I don't see the wisdom of that. I don't see the wisdom of the roads capital reserve contribution being maintained at the same amount. The cost of these trucks, we're not even covering the cost of a tandem plow contribution in there, let alone any of the other stuff. I see fires going up 25,000. I still don't understand what the 40,000 to emergency preparedness reserve is for. And I'm not sure. I asked that last year, and I went back and went, I don't know on my notes. So I guess I still don't know that we keep building this emergency reserve, and I'm not sure what that's for. I would like to see that be reduced and the fire go up, but that's just my thoughts.
So just to comment on that, there will be a further review and deeper dive with the reserves going forward. These are just first proposals, so there'll be further review on that to be being back in January.
Okay. So when we get down to debt servicing costs, it's staggering, and this is where I was like, wow. If we're adding $540,000 to our levy to start paying off the debt, we need to stop borrowing because it's not sustainable for the taxpayers, in my opinion. Some of these were to be borrowed internally. Some were definitely for Infrastructure Ontario. I really want to look at the borrowing for the Scotch Line Bob Cajun Road project. I know somewhere in here, you've brought in 2023, 1.4 million, I think it was, from that surplus to help offset what we will have to borrow. I think there will be another substantial surplus in 24 for the same reasons as 23. We've had some staffing issue vacancies, and when you start budgeting full years and wait months to get a replacement, I think I would really like to see 2024 surplus known and applied towards that project. We may not even have to borrow, which would be nice.
So we'll find that out when we get the numbers.
Yeah.
At the next meeting. So
But I've just
It's-
wanted to put out my opinion that that's just not, that's, 5% going to new borrowing payments. Ooh,
well, nobody,
that hurts.
nobody looks to borrow, but at the same time, if project needs to be done, you can't just ask the taxpayers to pay for it all in 1 year.
No, I get
So,
that. It
you know,
depends.
Borrowing is sometimes strategic also to be able to smooth out the tax increases. So, but once we get the numbers on whether it be on the project or on the surplus, then like I said, these numbers will be coming back to us in January with a more completed look. Another question, go ahead.
So my other comment goes to the 2025 draft Minden Hills Department Budget Impacts Sheet, which kind of summarizes the net costs of each one of these cost centers. And I see landfill has huge savings, and that'll be because of the producer responsibility deal, I believe, probably.
So coming through the chair, so there's a combination of things that are happening in that budget section where the landfill operations were brought in-house, and it's not the contractor that previously the township had, but it's also the change in the Blue Box program and the provincial funding. There's a multifaceted things that are happening in that department.
So my comment there is that if I did the math right, it's almost $419,000 reduced costs of operating the landfill and overhead for environment. That's where I struggle then, that we're going to go borrow the full cost of the Scotch Line transfer station project. If we're going to save that kind of money in the operations, I would want to see that part of the levy go towards that capital project. So it's in there every year, reduces what we have to borrow. It already sets us up next year then that we have that money to start paying the debt. Does that make sense?
I'll let CAO go first.
Sure. And I'm making notes on any of the questions, comments, suggestions. What I might also suggest is, I believe next week, we have an updated report on some of the producer responsibilities and some of the Blue Box program that while we have, I shouldn't speak for our manager of environmental services because she can do it more eloquently than me. I think there are some options for council to consider in terms of the program moving forward and some of the costs that are maybe related to non-eligible sites. So you might, well, I've made notes and we will follow up and bring back more information in January. I also know there's a report on the council agenda next week that may have some cost impacts as well.
And then again, remind us, we're having each of the departments coming forward to talk about budget. So when is that scheduled again?
On January 14th, you will review Public Works,
Okay.
Fire, and Administration. On January 16th, it will be Building Bylaw, Community Services, and Planning.
Okay. So at that point, we will get the numbers in more detail. And we're just talking hypothetical here right now. So. Go ahead.
Okay, so sorry, back one page where the deferred items are listed. Again, option for in-house cemetery lawn cutting. So we'll get a full report on that, okay. But it's not in this budget as proposed at the 9 point whatever% increase.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, we need to present the report to council and have council determine, is it an in-house external option? What would have been continued forward is external contracting. And so what we'll have to do as part of the report is look at what would be the cost difference of doing one versus the other. But you will get a separate report on that item.
The other question I had was the cultural center library roof and ventilation as being a deferred item. We had it in this year's budget. So I'm not sure why it hasn't been done or that it's being deferred again. I thought we were doing the library roof. I thought it was in there for $60,000 if my memory serves me correct. I might have it here. So I just wondered why, first, why it wasn't done, and second, why are we deferring it again?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I will follow up. I know there were different sections of that roof, and it could be that one section, the worst section, was included in this year's budget, but let me follow up. I know that there is more to do on that sort of entire building.
Okay. The other one is the curling club roof. Says if current grant application is not successful, the township portion has been included in the draft budget, but when I look later, I think it's been included as a transfer from reserve. And I don't understand how the project was supposed to be around 300,000, and I think it's in here for 550 or something now.
So through the chair, I think the original numbers came with just the roof, where this is the complete, including the insulation, because the insulation is part of the component of the roof, which is a capital project. So it is the township's responsibility as a capital improvement. So
Did we put in the grant application, like with the insulation and everything, at like 550,000 then? Because they had tried to do a grant application for the insulation part and weren't able to, but I'm just wondering, I was just surprised at the big jump, so
that's where it is.
okay. Some of these other things they've put off, I mean, we just need to have an understanding of why. Sandy Bay Road, we keep getting emails on, and I thought they were going to get an engineer's report on it. So will we get that to know?
Through you, you'll get more detail on the 14th. I can follow up on specifically on Sandy Bay Road.
Okay. The Lachlan Community Center building. Without seeing what the detail is of what you've included in Lachlan, I believe it's just sitting there as still a net zero. 10,000 expenses, 10,000 from the reserve, and I really think we need to give it the attention it deserves to have a fulsome discussion around here and decide what we're going to do with that building. So I guess after the committee meeting, we'll do that in January.
Yes.
One of the reserves in here is showing economic development, which I'm assuming is the sale of Milne Street, and I don't know that our treasurer knows about that. So there was a piece of property the township sold, and it was agreed it was going to go into an economic development reserve, but I don't think it's in there. So, and it may be a transfer in 24 that hasn't been done yet, but there was money from the sale of that property, and it had been proposed by staff to go into the economic development.
So through the chair, I'll look into that and get more information.
The other question I had was when we get to the capital projects financing new debt, the Mash Creek culverts are showing in here. Like they may be able to be covered by 24 surplus. So again, but I was hoping to ask Mike, but I guess he left. Like, is it being done soon? That project?
I can follow up. I mean, the intention for Mr. Timmons to be here was water wastewater.
Okay. So we will have further opportunity to discuss some of these other things as far as the excavator and like I cannot support borrowing money to turn roads into gravel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think again, we've indicated we will be refining all of our numbers. This is particularly a page that we want to spend some good time on. And to the council members' question, yes, you will be able to ask all the detail you want related to some of
That's
these
in
items.
those January meeting.
Right.
Okay, so again, one of my other questions was Davis Lake Road to boat launch is showing up in here at $785,952. But in May, we turned down that particular road to be done in 24's budget, but it was only $431,850. So I will want to know why all of a sudden this. And I'm certainly not trying to cut out that road, Councillor Saney. I have questions about the docks in town. I have questions about the Snowden Park Bridge, all those sorts of things. There was budget items in 24's budget that again haven't been done, and that's where I get concerned that we budget these things and don't do them. There was work to be done out at the Snowden Park, which was in the budget and it hasn't happened, but I guess we get those information at the next budget meeting, but.
Okay, any other questions? What is your? Oh, sorry, Councillor Saney.
Usual place here.
Yeah.
Just asking if we could get a breakdown for the cultural center for the cultural committee. So the things that is part of the cultural budget to go to that committee meeting as well for our next meeting. They don't have the kind of information that we have as council. So if we could get that budget for the cultural committee and for the heritage center, that would be helpful to have at a committee meeting. Thank you.
Else, please read the resolution.
Moved by Councillor McKelvey, seconded by Councillor Saney, that council receives the 2025 budget presentation as information.
All those in favor? Right. So where am I now? So we're going to there, right? And so this one's all, yeah, please read the.
Moved by
Resolution.
Councillor McKelvey, seconded by Deputy Mayor Shell, that bylaw 24-123 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council held during its special meeting of November 21st, 2024, be received, read a first time, considered, read a second and third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal fixed.
All those in favor? That is carried. Adjournment.
Moved by Councillor Sisson, seconded by Councillor Saney, be it resolved that the November 21st, 2024 special council meeting is hereby adjourned at 10:59 a.m.
All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you, everyone. Our next meeting is scheduled back home on Thursday, November 28th at 9 a.m. I will also note that on Tuesday, November 26th, our administrative offices will have a delayed opening to allow for a staff appreciation. Offices will open at 9:45 a.m. on that Tuesday. Thank you very much for your understanding and see you all next week.